everyone. I'm Selena Hill, and this is the new norm. Today, I'm speaking with Kent Johnson and Eric Martin Jr., the co founders of Black and Abroad, a multi platform travel and lifestyle company that has redefined experiences for the modern Black traveler through international events, culturally conscious travel experiences, and viral campaigns. Thank you so much for joining us here on Black Enterprise.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So, Black and Abroad has been making waves for the past few years since 2015. But for those who don't know, please let us know what Black and Abroad is and what inspired you to create it.
Yeah, I'll take that. Black and Abroad is, I mean, you gave us a wonderful introduction and you kind of covered a lot of it, but at its core, we are a multi-platform company, and those platforms consist of us doing international experiences and events, but also us launching marketing campaigns that speak directly to the Black consumer. And what got us to start Black and Abroad was really uh, we wanted to change search results on Google. Whenever we would search for experiences in the world as far as travel, we would never see Black travel. There was, I think, $43 billion being spent every year by the Black community in travel. And when you hear that enormous number, you would expect to see an enormous amount of representation in marketing and advertising. And we just did not see that. We didn't see that $1 billion representation. So we wanted to change that. We wanted to put as much imagery as we could into the space of Black travelers enjoying themselves. We wanted to tell Black stories around travel and experiences because our experiences are different in the world when traveling, and they weren't getting documented in a way that we expected them to, and in an authentic way. So we really
Eric, how would you add on to that? I mean, Kent just did a great job expanding on it, but is there anything else that you would want the audience to know about Black and Abroad and what you guys have been doing for the last 7 years?
Yeah, so both Kent and myself, we were avid travelers prior to Black and Abroad, and it literally came out of a need for just showcasing some of the spaces that we can enjoy. This is our world as well. A lot of us sometimes we didn't want to leave the four corners that we were familiar with. A lot of us, and seeing one of us, myself or Kent, or any influencer in the space, just in places like Croatia, places like Greece, not in these places, sort of gives that perspective that they could do it too. And so Kent mentioned that when we started out, it was a $45 billion industry. Well, since 2015, we've been able to grow that to $109.7 billion in 2019. So clearly something's been happening in this space. We're the growing demographics out there as well that have collectively come together to help encourage and show what we've been doing for so.
Oh yeah, the Black travel movement has definitely taken off. And to your point, like, and I've had these conversations about how I feel like a lot of times our parents and our grandparents, their idea of travel is to go to the Caribbean, right? Like Bahamas, Aruba, Jamaica. I love those islands, but there's so much more of the world yet to explore. And I really feel like because of social media and because of organizations like Black and Abroad, millennials and Gen Z have taken advantage of the opportunity to travel and really, catapulted the Black travel movement. But I wanted to ask you too, how do you think the pandemic has affected that movement?
I think it put things on hold temporarily, but it also gave people the chance to really sit and think about what their dream trip would be, right? Because we were all sitting at home, even us, in 2020, thinking about, oh man, the moment I get out there, the moment outside opens up again, where am I going to go? So I think people have been much more intentional about their travel, whereas let's just go here while they're the deeper experiences that they may have, uh, versus, maybe just hitting the Caribbean. Not saying that the Caribbean doesn't have that kind of moment there, but I think people are having longer conversations with themselves about the trips and the planning that they're doing, because I think we learn now that life is a little bit more precious than we expected it to be prior to 2020, right? We all are very thoughtful about how we approach things. I think that has bled over into how we travel as well.
Yeah, and I also want to piggyback on that to say that, how hasn't the ways it's really opened up the, proof of work for digital work for a lot of companies shifting over to digital commutes. So is that there is way now, as opposed to you having to take those PTO days and where we get like an average of 15 days a year. So now you have way more time that you can spend in destinations, and you have people, I think it was Indonesia, who were off. Was it Indonesia? Nomads that want to stay a little longer than the typical 5 to 7 day experience. So I packed on the space, and we're seeing that boiling up and boiling over now.
Barbados,
Yeah.
Indonesia, Barbados, as well.
It's so funny when you talk about, digital and online, everyone's experience has just manifested even more so through it. And one thing that I thought you guys did on the digital front, that was super cool is the Black Elevation Map, which features Black businesses, city guides, national guides, and more. Can you explain what the significance is behind this Black Elevation map, which is completely digital, and what inspired you to create it?
Middle of the pandemic, literally, I won't even say in the middle, at the handout for 2020, and it literally everything just came to a crashing halt. So we had to refund all of our guests April, and we're like, "Yo, what's up? Like, is this it?" Because at that time, nobody knew what was happening. The only thing we did know, however, was that small was shuttering at 37% closure of small brick and mortar Black businesses, in a study done by McCann Research Group, with what we have left over, because we don't know if we're ever going to leave. And if we're going to go out as a company, we might as well go out with a bang, right? And so it was like, let's just try to, lay ourselves down and encourage to, instead of having to travel internationally, stick with the domestic, stick with art in your city, places that you may have overlooked because you were in your own neighborhoods. So, we took a three-pronged approach to trying to make those things happen. We created this pay homage space, and just created this green book like experience, but not per se. We incorporated elements of what was called elevation to show the heights of the culture. And so the map creates this experience where there are over 30,000 points of interest, black owned businesses, black owned historic points, as well as just uh, curated list that we created for people to go out and explore. Their businesses on the map have really stood to profit as well in the time of the pandemic. So as it pertains to just encouraging people to get out and explore here in the U.S.
Very cognizant about is the idea of Black excellence, right? And we wanted to change what that meant, because we always hear that phrase, Black excellence, Black excellence. But what are you doing once you're excellent, right? So it should be about elevating. Once you get there, you should be bringing other people along with that to be the general emotion around the elevation map. It's not just about celebrating the excellence; it's about elevating each other as we get to that, right? So there was that sense of theme that we wanted along with the map, as well as we shot a short film to go along with it to highlight businesses throughout the country who were able to survive the pandemic's financial impact, and really shed a light on them in a
Hmm.
space, in a way that they hadn't gotten that opportunity before, and also for to really kind of harness with Victor Green had done. Everyone has harkened back to him or referenced him in it, but they hadn't really taken it a step forward, right? They were
Hmm.
duplicating his work instead of elevating it, or taking it to 2022, right there. That's what we were looking for. We were looking for something that felt like it had the spirit of him, but it was also embracing that and taking it a step further. So we really worked hard on that. That was it looked like when people were actually like, wow, this is great. It was really 2 years in the making. As Eric mentioned, it started, those conversations started very early in the pandemic, because we were like, okay,
Mhm.
we're feeling it as a business, and we know other businesses are too. How can we use our resources to make something wonderful that supports businesses, and it's a living, breathing thing. That site is updated regularly because we source that
Mm.
information from Google Business and Yelp. So anyone who's self-identified as a Black-owned business, the next day you would show up on the map if you hadn't already done so. So yeah, we wanted to really take the idea of community to a whole nother level.
Another thing that I definitely want to touch on is the Go Back to Africa campaign that you guys launched a few years ago, and how it really redefined just the stereotypes and just the derogatory messages that were attached to that phrase, and the visual that you guys created around it, like how people were tweeting and they put like nasty negative things all over the internet, always telling people of color to go back to Africa. And then you took that and just flipped it on its head and was like, yeah, we should go back to Africa. And it's one of the reasons why so many Black millennials are making that voyage, are going back to Ghana and going back to the motherland. So talk about that campaign.
Yeah, we were shocked at what we found, but at its core, Black and Abroad has always been a company very invested in data, right? We were looking at trends in Black travel, what was about to be hot, what was about to be not, and really just playing around with that data to see what kinds of creative moments we could have. So uh, in 2019, we started looking and saw that at the time, the phrase "go back to Africa" was still being used about 4,500 times a month, and that blew our minds. We were like, "It's 2019. Why is that still something that's in like the world's lexicon?" But it was used, yeah, negatively across social media. That phrase was used 4,500 times a month, and when we started telling people, they didn't believe us, and from there, it really kind of sparked this idea of, well, how do we take ownership of that? Part of our culture is taking ownership of things and making it honey where it was vinegar, right? So that was our focus on that. We wanted to make it a call to action to people to share their positive experiences on the complete opposite. But we also knew at the same time that there were wonderful experiences being had, and they ran the gamut from adventure to people who were in the music and fashion, food, and all of that texture that we were able to add to the story of Africa that wasn't getting recognized before. And we kind of, we had to hit them with a 1-2 punch. So when we launched that campaign, it was one thing, but then maybe 4 months later, in August of 2019, then President Trump had mentioned, well, he had told the four congresswomen to go back to where they came from, to go back to Africa, essentially, and it started a whole additional conversation around that. And we actually got pushback because people assumed that we had created our campaign in response to him, and it was like, no, we knew that this was a problem, and it was just like, this was the perfect example, the perfect case study to show exactly what we were talking about. So yeah, that campaign really gave the space to add some color to Africa, if you will, as far as what representation was out there.
Yes, I remember that moment. That you just brought it back, and I'm thinking back, like when he said that, it was so crazy. But to your point, it just represents a large sector in this country that is still just so ignorant. Like, I mean, if you think about like how colonialism worked, like people of color were here first. I don't like if you want to tell some people to go back, but again, people are ignorant, and that's why we have Black and Abroad helping to spread positivity and educate folks. So we only have a few more minutes before we start to wrap this conversation. I wanted to ask you guys, since traveling is your business, have you ever lived outside of the US?
Well, I guess yeah. I was about to say if you want to say, I mean, I've stayed in South Africa for a month. We after so we usually do trips around December, and after the guests leave, I usually just kick it for a while. So, you know, for well, prior to the pandemic, I would stay like the whole month of January. So I guess that's technically lived abroad. But I think Kent grew up. Would you grow up in Germany or something like that?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I was a military kid. So my dad was stationed in Berlin. I lived there for a year. But other than that, same as Eric. Whenever we're doing trips, if I have the opportunity, I'll stay for an extended time just to kind of really connect a little bit more. Because it's one thing to be in a location for a week or so, but to stay there for a month or several weeks, you really get to learn the ebb and flow of a country or a city. So, have a slower travel experience to really take it all in.
So if you did have to permanently relocate to a country, where would it be?
Oh man, it's so hard because there's so many countries, right? So for the food, I would go to Senegal. I think Ghana for the connection to culture. Um, I would say Joburg for the connection as well, like a super connective culture. I've like I told you, I've stayed months.
I'm sorry, it changes. I agree with Eric on the food. Senegal is the place. If I wanted to eat lovely for the rest of my life, it would be Senegal. Um, South Africa or Joburg, Johannesburg for the music. I love music, so um, they are putting out some of the best music in the world right now. Um, so that would be a place. If I was the continent, Indonesia, because that way my money would stretch a little bit longer, so that I could travel to these other places for food and music when I needed to.
Yeah, I want to say that as well. So I think what Ken said is absolutely on point. But I also for Black travel is Africa. Africa is rising right now, and it's always been. There is so much that we don't know, and we've been going there for quite some time, Black and abroad. But there's still things that we're learning about the continent. They all have their own cuisine, languages, customs, way of doing things, and I think social media and TikTok and Instagram, a lot of the narrative that we've been fed for so long is being demystified, and now people want to go their own on their own. We have connections to cultures now. African Americans, in particular, a lot of us we couldn't trace our lineage beyond the South, exactly what part of the continent we're from. And everybody wants to know where they're from. So I think slowly but surely we're going to see an increase of African Americans and just Afro Europeans as well, taking that sabbatical to the continent to just get a better understanding of it. So I definitely think Africa being the future.
And that's what you don't hear.
Right,
You would
right.
never know that about so many countries in the continent of Africa. And like you said, how rich they are, how culturally affluent they are, and everything. And I'm so happy again that we have Black and Abroad. Last thing I wanted to just ask you both is what is the future of Black travel, and what role will Black and Abroad play in it?
I think will help set the standard for the future. Um, but I think really force people to think a little bit harder about the experiences they want to have in the world. I think, as Eric mentioned, the option now for remote work will allow people to have those slower travel moments where you can stay for extended times and really get the moment to feel every nook and cranny of a location versus going there and being on a rushed itinerary and trying to check off as many to dos as you
Yeah.
can. Yeah, I think that's where we're leading towards a more slower travel, a more thoughtful experience, and people are looking for authenticity, right? And in that moment that it hasn't been done yet. At this point, every opportunity for a picture is on Instagram. We've all seen, people take the same picture over and over and over. I think as we start to get older and move away from social media, we'll get back to having those experiences that are exclusive to a group of people, and you're going to be more concerned with the experience instead of the documentation of it.
Amazing. Well, thank you again, Eric and Kent, for your time today and also just everything you've been doing when it comes to Black travel and making sure that the world experiences and sees the beauty of Africa for ourselves. So, thank you so much.